I honestly don't even know where to start, so I guess I'll just say this straight. I, 34M, think my wife, 32F, has been lying to me for a long time, and I only recently started putting the pieces together. We've been married for 6 years, together for 9. Up until about a year ago, I would have told anyone we were solid. Not perfect, but stable. We had routines, inside jokes, plans for the future. Normal stuff, but then little things started changing. At first, it was subtle. She became sharper. Like everything I said annoyed her. If I asked a simple question, "Hey, what time will you be home?" she'd snap back with something like, "Why are you tracking me now?" Totally out of proportion. Caught me off guard every time. Then came the small lies. At least I think they were lies. Stuff that didn't add up, but also wasn't big enough to confront immediately. She'd say she was working late, but come home without looking tired at all. Or she'd tell me she went out with a coworker. But when I casually asked about that coworker later, her story would shift just enough to make me question myself. And that's the thing, I started questioning myself a lot. I remember one night in particular. She told me she had a team dinner. Fine, normal. She came home around midnight, which already felt late for a team dinner. But whatever. I asked how it went. She rolled her eyes and said, "God, why do you interrogate me every time I leave the house?" That word, interrogate, stuck with me. I wasn't interrogating. I was asking how her night was. That was the first moment I felt something was seriously off. I tried to brush it off. Told myself she was stressed. Maybe something was going on at work. But deep down, something didn't sit right. The tone, the defensiveness, the way she flipped everything back on me. Looking back now, that was probably the beginning. And I wish I had trusted my gut sooner. After that night, I started noticing patterns I couldn't unsee. It wasn't just that she was snapping at me more. She was changing, like personality level changes. She used to tell me everything, even boring stuff about her day. Now I had to drag basic information out of her. And half the time she'd act like I was being invasive just for asking. Her phone became off limits. Before, she'd leave it anywhere, kitchen counter, couch, bathroom while showering. Now, always face down, always within reach. If she got a notification, she'd check it instantly, no matter what we were doing. And if I happened to glance in that direction, she'd tilt the screen away like it was some reflex. One time I picked it up just to move it off the table while I was cleaning, and she snatched it out of my hand. Not joking, like I burned her. "What are you doing?" she snapped. I just stood there like an idiot and said, "Relax, I was just moving it." She didn't apologize, just said, "Don't touch my stuff," and walked away. That hit me harder than I expected. Not because of the phone itself, but because of how aggressive she was about it. That wasn't her, or at least not the version of her I thought I knew. Then came the schedule changes. She suddenly had more late meetings, more last-minute plans, more I forgot to tell you moments. And every time I tried to clarify anything, she twisted into me being controlling. "You don't trust me at all, do you?" she said once, completely out of nowhere. And I remember thinking I didn't, until now, but I didn't say that. I kept quiet. I kept trying to be the understanding husband, the one who doesn't jump to conclusions. Still, the feeling kept growing. That constant, low-level anxiety, like something was happening just out of sight, and I was the only one pretending not to notice. The weirdest part, she also started being randomly nice, like too nice. Out of nowhere, she'd bring me my favorite takeout, or be unusually affectionate, or initiate sex when we hadn't in weeks. And it wasn't consistent, it came in waves. Cold, distant, irritated, then suddenly warm, attentive, almost guilty. At the time, I wanted to believe that meant things were getting better. Now I think it meant something else entirely. The first real crack, the one I couldn't ignore no matter how hard I tried, happened on a random Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, no big fight, no obvious red flag, just a receipt. She had come home late again, said she'd been finishing a project with her team. Same tone, same irritation when I asked anything. I didn't push it. At this point, pushing only made things worse. The next morning, I was looking for a pen in her bag because mine had run out of ink. I never go through her stuff like that, but it honestly didn't feel like a big deal at the time. We used to borrow each other's things all the time. That's when I found it. A crumpled receipt from a place I didn't recognize. Not a chain, not somewhere we usually go. Just some small, upscale restaurant across town. The timestamp? 11:47 p.m. 2 meals, 2 drinks. Not cheap. I remember just staring at it for a solid minute, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it was a team dinner? Maybe she went out after work with colleagues? But then I saw the date. It was from the night she told me she grabbed something quick at the office because she was too busy to eat properly. Her exact words. Too busy to eat. But somehow had time for a late dinner at a place that requires reservations? That's when my stomach dropped. I didn't confront her right away. I wish I could say it's because I was being smart and strategic, but honestly, I was just scared of what it meant. So I did something I'm not proud of. I started paying attention in ways I hadn't before. Quietly, carefully. I checked little things, timestamps, patterns, inconsistencies. I even memorized the names she mentioned casually, just to see if they'd come up again later. And they didn't. Or worse, they changed. One day it was, I was with Anna from work. Next time it was, oh, you don't know her. She's new. Even though the timeline didn't match up at all. Every answer she gave created more questions. And the more I noticed, the harder it became to ignore the obvious conclusion forming in the back of my mind. She wasn't just being distant. She was lying. And not just once or twice, constantly. I stopped sleeping properly. Not in a dramatic way, no pacing around the house at 3 a.m. or anything, but it was like my brain just wouldn't shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd replay conversations, tone shifts, weird reactions, trying to connect dots that didn't want to connect cleanly. And during the day, I started noticing even more, like how she'd suddenly leave the room to take calls. Not even trying to hide it, just casually getting up mid-conversation and saying, I need to take this, then disappearing into the hallway or even the bathroom. When she came back, I'd ask, everything okay? And she'd give me that same annoyed look. Yeah, why wouldn't it be? Always flipping it back on me. One evening, though, something different happened. She was in the shower, and her phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't planning to look, I swear, but the screen lit up right in front of me, and I caught a glimpse of the notification before I could stop myself. No name, just a number, and a message preview. Miss you already. That was it. 2 seconds. That's all it took. My heart started pounding so hard it actually scared me. I just stood there, staring at the phone like it might explode. I didn't pick it up. I didn't unlock it. I just stared, because in that moment, everything I'd been trying to rationalize snapped into place. This wasn't stress. This wasn't just work. This wasn't me overthinking. This was something real. I sat back down on the bed and tried to act normal when she came out. I don't know how I managed it, honestly. I think I just went numb. She walked in, towel drying her hair, completely casual. I asked, as calmly as I could, who texted you? She didn't even hesitate. Just work. Just work. I remember nodding like I believed her, but inside, something shifted. Not broke, shifted. Like a line had been crossed, and there was no going back to how things were before. That night, she fell asleep almost instantly. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing those 3 words over and over again in my head. Miss you already. And for the first time, I didn't try to explain it away. At that point, I stopped doubting it. She wasn't just lying. She was having a full-blown affair. So yeah, this is the part where I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. I know how that sounds. I know people are split on it. Some say it's justified. Others say it's a complete violation no matter what. A year ago, I probably would have been in the second group. But a year ago, my wife also wasn't coming home at midnight with stories that didn't line up in messages from unknown numbers saying, miss you already. It happened 2 nights after that weird, nice evening. She fell asleep on the couch while we were watching something. Phone in her hand, screen still on. I remember just sitting there, staring at it, feeling my heart pound like I was about to do something illegal. I hesitated for a long time, longer than I want to admit. But then I thought about all the lies, all the deflection, all the times she made me feel crazy for asking normal questions. And I picked it up. First, I thought it'd be locked. It wasn't. I don't know if she forgot, or if she just didn't think I'd ever actually go through with it. I opened her messages, and there it was. A thread with a number, no name saved. Same one from the notification. I opened it. The first thing I saw was, "Last night was worth the risk." I felt like I got punched in the chest. I scrolled. I shouldn't have, but I did. There were weeks of messages, maybe months. It wasn't constant texting, more like bursts. Conversations that picked up right where they left off, like this was an ongoing thing. Some of it was casual. Some of it wasn't. Plans, inside jokes, references to places they'd been, and then lines that made it impossible to misunderstand. "Wish I could wake up next to you again. He has no idea. You looked incredible tonight." I actually had to stop for a second because my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. That line though, "He has no idea," that's when it stopped being just betrayal. It became humiliation. Not only was she cheating, she was talking about me, with him, like I was some kind of joke. I kept scrolling, even though every part of me was screaming to stop. I found dates, specific ones, and that's when things got worse. Because some of those dates matched nights she told me she was working late, or with coworkers, or too tired to talk. It all lined up perfectly. Every lie suddenly had a real story behind it. I locked the phone, put it back exactly where it was, and just sat there in silence. She was still asleep, peaceful, like nothing in the world was wrong. And I was sitting right next to her, realizing my entire reality for the past few months had been fake. That was the moment I stopped doubting it. She wasn't just lying. She was having a full-blown affair. I didn't confront her right away. I know some people would have woken her up on the spot, thrown the phone in her face, demanded answers. And trust me, I wanted to. For a solid 5 minutes, I was sitting there imagining exactly how that would go. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the fact that I already knew she'd just lie her way out of it somehow. Twist it, minimize it, turn it back on me like she always did. So instead, I stayed quiet for 3 days. Those were probably the longest 3 days of my life. I acted normal, or at least I tried to. Went to work, came home, had conversations with her like I didn't know she was cheating on me. Slept next to her at night knowing she'd been with someone else. That part messed with my head more than anything. She'd casually touch my arm, ask me how my day was, even kiss me goodbye in the morning, and all I could think was, "You were texting him last night." I started noticing even more details now that I had context, like how she'd smile at her phone in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months, or how she'd suddenly get busy at very specific times. Times that now matched the message patterns I saw. I also did something else during those 3 days. I gathered proof. Again, not proud of it, but at that point, I needed something concrete. Not for her. I already knew she'd deny everything, but for myself. So I wouldn't let her rewrite reality when the confrontation finally happened. I took photos of the messages, specific ones. The ones that couldn't be explained away as just a friend or "you're overreacting." The "he has no idea" message. The "last night was worth the risk." The dates that matched her work nights. Every time I looked at those screenshots, I felt the same mix of anger and something else I didn't expect. Disappointment, not just in her, in myself, because part of me kept thinking, how did I let this go on for so long? How many signs did I ignore because I didn't want to believe it? By the 3rd day, I couldn't take it anymore. Not the pretending, not the silence, not sleeping next to someone who was living a completely different life behind my back. I knew the conversation was coming, and I knew it wasn't going to be calm. The confrontation finally happened on a Friday night. Nothing special about the day. It just reached a point where I couldn't hold it in anymore. The pretending was eating me alive. She came home around 10 p.m., Said she'd been wrapping things up at work. Same tone, same casual delivery like she'd said it 100 times before. I was sitting in the living room, just waiting. I didn't greet her, didn't ask how her day was. I think she noticed immediately, because she paused mid-step and looked at me like something felt off. "What?" she said, already slightly defensive. That word again. "What? No, hey. No, are you okay?" Just straight to attitude. I took a breath and said, as calmly as I could, "We need to talk." She rolled her eyes, actually rolled them. "About what?" And I don't know why, but that reaction pissed me off more than anything. "No," I said louder this time, "you are doing this." She turned around slowly, arms crossed, that same cold look on her face. "Doing what exactly?" I stood up, grabbed my phone, and opened the photos. "You want to explain these?" I held the screen out to her. For the first time since this all started, she didn't have an immediate response. She looked at the messages, really looked at them, and I saw it, that flicker of panic. But it didn't last long, because instead of apologizing, instead of even acknowledging what was right in front of her, she doubled down. "You went through my phone?" she said, her voice sharp, almost offended. "Are you serious right now?" I just stared at her. "That's your response?" "Yes, that's my response," she shot back. "That's a massive invasion of privacy. What the hell is wrong with you?" I actually laughed at that, not because it was funny, but because it was so unreal I didn't know how else to react. "What's wrong with me?" I said. "You're cheating on me." She didn't even flinch. "You're overreacting," she said flatly. "It's just texting. You're taking things out of context." Out of context. I could feel the anger building, but underneath it there was something worse. This weird disbelief that she was still trying to deny something so obvious. "So you're not cheating?" I asked, staring straight at her. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away. "That depends on what you consider cheating," she said. That answer hit harder than anything else that night, because it wasn't even a denial. It was a setup. "What does that even mean?" I said. "It means," she started, her tone shifting into something colder, more calculated, "that maybe if you actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't need to talk to someone else." There it was. Blame. I felt something drop in my stomach. "So this is my fault now?" "I didn't say that," she replied quickly, but not convincingly. "I'm just saying you haven't exactly been present lately." I almost laughed again. "I've been trying to talk to you for months. You're the one who keeps shutting me down." She rolled her eyes. "Because every conversation turns into this. Accusations, paranoia. You acting like I owe you an explanation for every second of my day." "I'm your husband," I said, my voice rising. "Yeah, I expect some basic honesty. And I expect some trust." She shot back immediately. The hypocrisy was unreal. "You lost that the moment you started lying," I said. "Don't flip this on me." She went quiet for a second. Not guilty, just thinking, calculating. And then she said something that honestly messed with my head more than anything else that night. "I didn't lie about everything. Not everything." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She shrugged again, like it was nothing. "It means you're acting like I've been living some double life, and that's not true." I held up the phone again. "You are living a double life." She didn't answer that. Instead,